You've told me a lot about your agent. Her name
Yeah,
is Zosia, if I'm
Zosha.
correct.
Inspired, by the
Zosia.
way, by a show I really liked um,
Yeah,
on Apple TV Plus, I
Apple
think
TV.
it is. One of the characters there is Zosha, and she's incredibly helpful. She helps the main character out the whole day. And
Uh-huh.
my
Uh-huh.
wife and I were watching the show. We were joking. We said, I actually would like to have a Zosha, because the character in the show is first very much like, leave me alone, Zosha. And we're like, why is she so mean? I would like to have a Zosha. So
Uh-huh.
then when OpenClaw came out, I was like, you know what? I want to have my own Zosha. I was a little bit mindful of the fact that I didn't want to use literally the project OpenClaw because
Uh-huh.
the project OpenClaw has the ability to code itself. And I thought, you know what? I'm starting out with this. Let me experiment with it, but first understand it a bit better. So there was a sort of fork of this project called NanoClaw. It runs in a container. I don't want to get too technical, but it limits the ability of the project, right? So I installed that. I installed it on a brand new Mac Mini, so it's also not on my normal MacBook. And I thought, you know what? I don't share my own phone number. It's a tip I got from you. So I got like a €7 SIM subscription. So she has her own phone number. She has her own email address. She has her own calendar. But she's able to, for instance, I shared my calendar with her. So every day at 9 from her phone number, she sent me a WhatsApp message because WhatsApp is for me a sort of natural ecosystem I'm already in. And she tells me what my day looks like. And I can add her to app groups with other people where she can add value in that app group. For instance, remind us of certain things. So I have a family app group where she will remind my kids of dentist appointments, etc. So we're starting to get some use out of it. But because I'm limiting her in a way, because she's not on my MacBook, she's not on my email, and she doesn't have unlimited capabilities of OpenClaw, I'm also not
Mhm.
pulling everything out of it. I know that, but it's on purpose because I want to always
Right.
feel that I'm in control. So that's a
Yeah,
little
makes
bit my
sense.
story with my claw, if you will. Yours is different in a way, because you use OpenClaw.
Yeah, you told me about NanoClaw, but I couldn't resist. So I tried the other thing, OpenClaw, the thing that everyone is ranting about. And then afterwards, I also used NanoClaw to set up Amy, which is our company agent, right? So
Exactly.
Amy works for Aimable. It's an employee. And Rosie is my personal agent. We always argue about who has to set the table and who has to do the dishes in the dishwasher and like the chores that have to happen. And being the geek that I am, I had built an entire app, like a mobile phone app for iPhone in the past. And I gave that to the kids. And of course, they don't check it. They don't do anything with it. It sends out notifications, but they shut down the notifications so they don't get any notifications. So it just didn't work. So now I wanted to try a different approach. And I instructed Rosie, look, you're in this group, you're with my family. You can only take certain commands from me, right? Don't do everything that they ask you, but I need you to manage the family chores and I want you to do it in the most honest way. So I want you to distribute the work properly across the week so the kids don't feel like they are doing too many chores or more chores than their peers are. And that's basically all I said. And then I said, these are the kinds of things that have to happen. Go figure it out. So she's in this WhatsApp group and communicating with the children. And in the beginning, it didn't work so well. Like in the first 5 minutes, it didn't work so well. She was like, being a little bit silly. But then the kids started to really give her some feedback and saying, hey, that's not fair. You gave me this task twice already this week. My sister has the week off. She can do some of those things. And then maybe I can do something next week. So they started negotiating with Rosie about who gets to do what when in an attempt to make the whole distribution as fair as possible. And it was just, for me, it was really interesting to see that happen. They're effectively programming the AI by talking to it, using their usual communication mechanism, which is WhatsApp. And
How
it's
does
just
it work
incredible
then?
to see it happen.
Because you
Yeah.
said you trained Rosie that she has to listen to you and not to your kids. So what happens then when they try to sort of effectively change her behavior?
Yeah, it's very crazy because she kind of understands where the border is. If they're asking for a day off or something, then Rosie will say, well, I'll have to check that with Arye. And then that gets, that frustrates him enormously, of course. But it's interesting. She kind of senses that certain things she can do and some things she cannot do.
Yeah.
But I didn't instruct her to do that. So
Interesting.
that's kind of funny. Also, she really understands the role of my wife in this entire thing. She knows that we're on par, right? So when my wife says something, that's equally important. And it's also kind of funny. So she understands the structure of a family and who has what role within the family. So it's super interesting. Yeah. What they started doing was the kids didn't like the way that Rosie was calling them out using their name.
Mm-hmm.
So they started to instruct her to use certain nicknames, and really incredible nicknames. I'll have to look them up for you. But my oldest is called, it's got a crazy name, the Legendary Cool Dude. And that's the way that Rosie is supposed to talk to my oldest daughter. And the middle one is the Untouchable Alpha Lord of Chill. And it's just, that's okay.
And the kids made that up, right?
The kids made that up, and it's fine with me. Anyway, so I've got my Rosie, and in the office, we have Amy.
So you have the one Mac Mini, and on the Mac Mini, you're running two Claw instances, correct? One is the Nano Claw for work and the Oak Claw, but they don't require like two different Mac Minis, right? You're still, the Mac Minis like 1 or 2% CPU time, probably most of the time. You can easily run multiples, right?
You can run 100.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I do notice since you've implemented Amy, we have a lot of, I think of our Slack channels, there's a lot of activity, and I notice she's reading most of the things we do. She's also reading the transcripts of all our internal meetings. So she is really aware of what's happening at Aimable. And that's, I think, it starts, of course, and that's, to be honest, with every AI application. You have the model, but you also have to have the context for the task at hand. And the context for work at Aimable is, of course, what's happening at Aimable. So I think one of the clever things you did is give Amy access to all our meetings and most of our important Slack channels. I don't think she's in our emails or anything. But
No. I gave her access to certain Slack groups. And by the way, I've also informed everyone in the group that was happening, so people know. And so she can read up, for example, on one particular Slack group, which we call #interesting. And within the company, whenever someone hears something interesting, finds a link to an article that's interesting, we drop it into the Slack channel.
Yeah.
And then Amy picks all of that up at night, actually really early in the morning, 5 a.m., and she goes through all the things that we shared that we declared interesting. And sometimes we add a comment, right? You added a comment the other day. You said, hey, this is interesting. Microsoft posted something online about how Copilot, something about Copilot. And I had not read up on it yet, but then Amy does. Right? She goes to the website, she analyzes what's there, and then she reports back. And we get this daily newsletter where Amy looks at all the stuff that we said that was interesting and then compares it with our knowledge base, which contains our value proposition, our brand voice, and a bunch of other things. And then she looks at that information through the lens of what's important for Aimable, and it distills it into a format that's much more consumable and it gives it back to us. So there's this person in the loop, an AI, that's constantly looking around, grabbing bits of information, and then translating it into why that's relevant for us. Saves me a ton of time. And
but I think it's interesting here, is the human-agent interaction or collaboration. The #interesting channel you mentioned is already a curated list because it's not the whole internet. It's things that we thought, like one of us, by the way, that Copilot was, I think Tim posted it originally and I maybe commented on it. And then, of course, Amy picks it up. But so first of all, it starts with that we find something interesting, put it in the channel. And then we have a reason why we think it's interesting, why we share it. Then an agent, in this case, Amy, is going to read through it with all the knowledge of indeed our value proposition and other important documents, maybe other meetings that we had, maybe even meetings with clients. It will find relevant links to it that we maybe didn't even notice ourselves. So even the person that thought the article was interesting and wanted to share it, maybe doesn't even realize a week ago, one of our clients was actually talking about the same issue. And maybe with the insight of this article, we can help them solve it. So it is much more, I think, than just sort of a tool that says, okay, a lot of people are sharing links. Give me every day a daily list of what was shared. That you can actually do without AI. It's basically
Yeah, that's
aggregating a
true.
list. It's like the
It's
old
true.
RSS feeds, right?
Yeah.
That's not what it is. What we're trying
No,
to
no,
do
no.
with Amy is really analyze it, make it relevant, and give it to us with that extra context. And often when I read those sort of 5 a.m., I don't read it at 5 a.m., by the way, but those 5 a.m. updates, I think,
6
oh,
a.m.
wow,
Yeah.
the connection that she made is actually interesting. And sometimes I hadn't even flagged it or noticed it
Yeah.
myself. So I think the human agent combination works really well. We do the first sort of
Yeah.
batch and they sort of make it more
Yeah. Well,
interesting or
but
more
there's
intelligent.
a bunch of these things happening because you're right. We are curating the links that she digs into. We're also providing her with very specific context. We've bootstrapped her with documents that explain what Aimable is about, what our vision is, the three pillars, and all the things that we're constantly talking about. So she understands that and she uses that as she goes through those articles. But then there's the other thing that is the transcripts of our internal meetings. And I think that's where the real magic happens. And we discussed this also in the previous podcast where we spoke about this feedback loop is that Amy can read up on all our conversations, or at least the ones that we declared safe to be shared with Amy. We don't share everything. So she knows what we're talking about. And this conversation as well that we're having now, she will get that transcript tonight and she will read it and it will help her understand our point of view. She gets to learn from that and gradually understand better and better how we think and what we find important and what we find less important. So you're correct. It's in the interaction between us feeding her interesting things, she digging into it, us discussing something in a podcast, in a meeting, and then feeding that back into Amy so she gets better and better over time. And that, I think, is where I'm seeing the best results from AI at the moment. When you implement something like that.
And I dare to say that 99% of companies and organizations are not doing this. They are, I
No.
think 99% are doing some sort of work with AI, be it even as a glorified replacement of Google. You know, that's sort of the minimal thing that people probably do with it. Maybe sometimes draft an email with it, things like that. But I think the 1% is at the level that we're doing it, where we say like, hey, all our company knowledge has to be every day used to enrich the AI so the AI can be more
Right.
effective for us. And when we talk to our clients and help them with sort of the main challenges we're helping them with, they're probably not even aware of that this type of sort of this way of working is even possible, right? But also
Yeah.
requires discipline, because when we have an internal meeting, we make sure that our whatever note-taking tool we want to use is on. And if it's not on, you often joke the meeting didn't happen, right? So it's like some
Yeah.
people are religious like that. If they go on vacation and forget to post on Instagram, the vacation didn't happen. Well, we have that with note-taking because we
Yeah.
want to capture everything. Because to be honest, every week so much happens, and our output as a team, not to sort of compliment ourselves, but I think it's true. With a relatively small team, we achieve a lot in a week, and that's possible because we are so incredibly efficient with using our information to make things better, and that requires discipline. I think a lot of the other organizations are simply not there yet, right? So there's a lot of explaining to do to help them work this way.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to incorporating some of this thinking into Aimable itself. It's kind of,
Absolutely.
we're running these experiments a little bit ahead of the kinds of problems that our
Yeah.
customers are having. But I think we could bring something like that into the platform to start creating that flywheel where um, you get human input and agents figuring stuff out and then feedback looping on it continuously to improve on the data that you have and also improve on the quality of the output of the AI.
That makes
And
sense.
that would, yeah, I think that would be incredibly interesting to see happen. You even added some people that were working on your house or something in a WhatsApp
And they
group
were
with
confused. First, they thought, because they didn't know the Zosha character from the TV show, because we also have a picture of that character, so it's the actual actress. But the show is not so known that everybody knows about it. And the show's called Pluribus. So they thought I hired a real life full-time PA or something. And they're like,
Yeah.
okay, this lady is just helping us. And then later it's like, this person does not exist. It's AI. Oh, I didn't know. So you can actually fool people quite. It's not that I wanted to fool them, but that's what happened. They thought it was a real person. At a certain point, Zosha was so eager to please that it was responding to everything. So a person would say something and then it would say something. She would basically summarize what the person said and said again. So then I instructed Zosha, hey, you know what, just be silent in this group unless you're actually like I directly talk to you.
That is really hard for them
to do.
isn't it?
Yeah, because then she started saying, so somebody would say something and then Zosha would say, I'll be silent or something like that. And I'm like, no, Zosha, you're silent, don't say anything. And then she says, got it, I will be silent. And there's this need
I have the exact same thing.
respond.
I have Amy set up such that it reports on my to-do items in our CRM system. And then at the moment, I told her, stop doing that. Don't report on my to-do items anymore because you're flooding Slack and, my colleagues don't have to know about my tasks. And now, every day, right, she reports, okay, it's 7 a.m. I will not say anything about Arya's to-do list.
I think, but I've not researched this. I think because inherently the large language models, when they came out before agents existed, they were just sort of a chat interface, right? So this whole premise of my life form is always delivering a chat message is so ingrained in these models that it's incredibly hard to shut them up, to be honest. They keep... This fits in our own philosophy, which is built into Aimable, where you say, okay, this is what the model does, and there's something else in between, which is not AI, it's just software that says, okay, no matter what you do, I decide what goes out. It's sort of the safety gate principle. And of course, we didn't build this in yet, but you could do that. You could build something in that if the response is nonsensical, that it doesn't do anything. So we could create those hard safety gates, and those are, of course, needed if you would expose this to, for instance, a customer service channel or whatever. You want to lock it in. Now we're more interested in gaining as much as knowledge as possible and growing our knowledge base. So then it doesn't really matter, I find, but it is sometimes funny to see that it happens indeed.
Yeah. All right. Okay, so we went from personal agent to family agent, then to work agent, which is Amy. And it took a couple of iterations, but I think she is doing a really good job now.
Yeah.
In particular, helping the engineers sort out the issues in our issue tracker and digging into our meetings and reporting back on them and distilling, interesting nuggets of information and bringing all of that together.
Even how our roadmap comes to life.
And our roadmap,
it's really amazing. Yeah,
there's so much going on there. And I don't know, I feel like it's at least one additional person on the team and maybe more. I don't know. I haven't really thought about that, but given the different things that she's doing, you would have to hire like at least 3 different people to fulfill those roles.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can easily expand that to do much more.
And another topic that will automatically come up when you start doing this is the cost of AI, right? Because if agents can 24/7 talk to each other, you're gonna burn tokens. And so far, of course, they have been sponsoring these tokens like crazy, but Claude has decided, or the company behind Claude, Anthropic, to not allow OpenClaw to do that anymore. So because they felt like, you know what, the sponsoring of tokens works if there's people that use it a lot and people that don't use it a lot. But if there's agents, it's used so much that actually the people that want to use it, they're going to suffer. So I understand their decision, but you will maybe be less likely to do these agent-to-agent experiments then if you have to pay for each token yourself.
Yeah, and cost controls is going to be a massive factor to make sure that it doesn't go out of hand. Okay. Well, we'll see where that experiment goes.
Yeah, let's report back here to share what we found out. Yeah,
that was fun.
Thank you.
Talk to you later.
See you soon. Cheers.
Cheers.